Oh my gosh, what a rich service this has been already. I don't think I need to say a word after everything we've experienced this morning already. Between that beautiful song and message and Jackie's rendition of I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free, and your incredible reminder of coming to the reading spot prepared, and your incredible history has just been wonderfully rich. So thank you all so much for such a meaningful experience. I hope I can add to it. By the way, short notice, but would one of our ushers be kind enough to get the handheld microphone from Todd Milne and maybe walk around like Phil Donahue when the time comes so that we can hear folks? This is our periodic, I try to do it at least once quarterly, conversations with Todd, where you get to ask questions of me. Try not to deal with church business questions. We save that for business meetings, but anything that else might, you might be wondering about, a question about something I've said or not said, those sort of things. Before we begin, I'm kind of reminded of a joke, actually, of the Catholic boy and the Unitarian boy who swapped churches with each other. So they went to the Catholic church first, and the priest did the sign of the cross, and the little Unitarian boy says, "Well, what does that mean?" And the Catholic boy says, "Well, it doesn't mean a thing." And pretty soon, they call for the bread and wine, and communion is taken, and the Unitarian boy says, "Well, what does that mean?" And the Catholic boy says, "Well, it doesn't mean a thing." So then at some point, everybody gets down and kneels for prayer, and again, the little Unitarian boy asks, "What does that mean?" The Catholic boy says, "It doesn't mean a thing." So anyway, this went on, and finally the next Sunday comes, and they're at the Unitarian church. And the first thing the minister does is take off his watch and set it on the pulpit. And of course the Catholic kid says, "Well, what does that mean?" And the Unitarian boy says, "Doesn't mean a thing." So, nobody laughed. You didn't get that. Well, you will in a moment, because the clock isn't working in front of me. I've set my watch down to keep up with the time. So, if you're wondering why I did that, it doesn't mean a thing. Okay. So, I'll wonder if anybody wants to start us off. Did you want to ask about what it takes to be a good comedian? Timing, yeah. Yes, okay. Yeah, if you'll, just because our friends are streaming with us, we want them to be able to hear, and hold it up close there.
Okay. So we talked about this a lot, actually, in Kurdkara, and it's something I think that you do really well, and I would like to learn how to do it better. And that is to be able to articulate the opposite view or another perspective that's different than your own before you try to share your own perspective. How do you do that? How can we learn to do that better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Ugh. Well, thank you, one, for saying that I do that well, because that's that is to me a very valuable thing for all of us to do that I don't feel that I do well. It's a lifelong sort of practice. For those who don't know Kurdkara, if I can just clarify, Kurdkara Dojo was a group. We at least on a temporary hiatus, but it's been in the church for years, that practices logic in a very practical way by getting us to ask 4 questions of ourselves. The first question is to own our biases. What are my biases? So you hear something, and there's usually an immediate emotional response to it. We don't catch the emotional response because we can't get in touch with our emotions until we articulate them as a thought, and our thoughts feel like they're reason or rational. But really, the thought is another expression of the emotion we're having that we try to understand by articulating it. And so we have to first say, how does this make me feel? And what do I think about it? So often there's a negative or positive response. Couldn't agree more. Hate the idea. And then what is it causing us to feel? I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling exuberant, feeling joyful, happy, whatever it might be. And if we're feeling happy because of something we hear or angry because of something we hear, it's probably because of our bias, not because there is something objectively wrong or right with what we're hearing, or not necessarily so. So that's the first question. What are our biases? What's preventing me? And that's such an important question because that really gets to the heart of Lynn's question. What enables me to see things from the opposite perspective or a different perspective, even if it's my own thought, right? So I think going to that place of uncertainty helps us be more honest about our own ideas. So that question to me is primal to your question. The second question, we would say, what's the what? Which in logic would be referring to the conclusion that we're being asked to accept as true, or the thought or the propositional statement that we're being asked to accept as true. So what is it that somebody is actually asking me to walk away believing? Because oftentimes, like me right now, you say a whole lot of things, right? There's a whole lot of statements and a whole lot of chatter. You want to boil it down. What if I were to put it in one sentence, what is it I'm being asked to accept? And once we do that, we ask, what's the why? And logic could be the premises or the reasons to accept something as true. Oftentimes when people speak about an idea, something they believe in, they don't tell you why. That's one of the problems I have with a certain president in the world right now. No data, right? We never understand the reasons for their thinking. We're just supposed to trust their propositional statements without any reason for doing so. The reason is called reason is because it demands reasons. So what's the why? And that's something few of us ask. I think it should be the most fundamental question of anything we hear, because we're constantly bombarded by ideas, whether they're coming from our own heads, whether they're coming from people around us, whether they're in the news. We're really in what I call a noosphere, an ocean of ideas bombarding us at all times. Certain schools of thought go by, big humpback schools of thought, or lone ideas, whatever it might be. And we're having emotional responses all day to these ideas without even being aware that our emotions are being triggered by the ideas, right? Because, as I've said in previous sermons, we're wired to love our ideas as if they are our own children, to nurture them so that they can get passed on to the future even after we're dead, right? They're parasitic in that sense. And then finally, does the what follow from the why? Do those reasons actually support what I'm being asked to accept as true? It's a little harder. It helps to actually know some formal logic to answer that question, but a lot of it is intuitive, right? So now, if you ask yourself those 4 questions, you're doing 4 times as much as most people when it comes to dealing with the ideas that come your way. Most of us just get the idea and we have a reaction and don't think about it. So when I started to set up the Kudkara, and it took a few incarnations to figure out the process, if you remember, Lynn, I asked myself, I've been saying for years, if we taught kids logic or critical thinking today, we could solve most of the world's problems in one generation, and I still believe that's true. Why? Why would I say that? Because I know formal logic. I can do formal logic. It's very complicated, and I can't do it when people are speaking to me, in the sense that I don't break things down into logical syllogisms and those sort of things and work out the syllogism to see if it actually rationally fits. In my head, I can't do that. I would have to stop and sit and write it down, and it would take a lot of time. So you can't function that way. So why am I saying this about logic? Well, it's because I intuitively have distilled it down to this sort of four-step process. And the Kudkara gave me an opportunity to articulate that in a way that others could use it. So to me, that is the secret to the question you're asking, right? If you adopt this process and it becomes internal to how you filter information, part of that is being able to look at the opposite of what you said and see if there's any validity of what you're focusing on, at least, or what others have said, and finding, is there some validity to it or not? Or could the opposite of what I think be true also? And often, yes. Often the answer is yes. Two things can seem to be true even if they oppose each other a little bit. And that's the reality that we live in. Or as I often say, when people come up and say, well, you didn't say this, you didn't say that. I say, no, I didn't say that. There's billions of people in the world. I'm not going to say everything. Right? I'm very limited on what I can say. But as my philosophy professor, Dr. Roark, used to say, and I'm sure he got this from a philosopher, I can't remember which one, but he used to say, no human statement is ever adequate. So it's an approach to life that becomes internalized, right? When you start to realize this is, or accept that this is part of our reality, that I can't know everything, that there's always more to what I have to say, much more to what I have to say that must also be true. And there is something about what I say that is probably wrong because it is incomplete, or perhaps just blatantly false. To live in that reality, I think, gives you the humility to look at other possibilities. So that's the short answer.
I have a question.
Oh, good. Yes, you just use the microphone, Chris. Absolutely.
I'm wondering, we're engaged in this rather strange dialogue, argument, debate between our president and the Pope, the leader of 1.5 billion Catholics in the world. It would be unlikely that a Unitarian would be chosen to mediate that conversation, but if you were chosen, how would you do it?
Oh my God, that is a tough question. I think I would probably insult everybody. Yeah, well, for one thing, I think the Pope is doing a pretty good job of mediating it himself by simply saying, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not in a fight with the president. I am expressing my faith in the way that I think it should under the circumstances that are going on in the world. I don't know that I would be a good mediator. I'll just be honest. I don't know that I would be a good mediator for that or a lot of things. I don't think I have the personality to mediate things. I'm not rigid, but I do take a side on issues like this. So I will say that I have a sermon coming up in May on our founding documents that call upon us to crush superstition. So the real issue I'm having right now with the issue that you bring up, Karen, with what's going on in the world, in our country, is that we're having serious conversations about whether or not the president had a blasphemous image on his social media. Right? I mean, I'm literally hearing newscasters of prominent American news programs talking about what God says and what the Bible says, and that this is blasphemy. I feel like I'm honestly, I feel like I'm in a very, I feel like I'm under a country where the Ayatollah Khomeini is leading us or something. It's unbelievable that in 2026 in America we have serious conversations about somebody being blasphemous. I mean, yeah, I think the AI thing was ridiculous. It shows the madness of the king, if you will, for me, the arrogance, the ego, the malignant narcissism, all that stuff. But it's a great, it's great, good. I'm glad we see more about the truth of this, who this human being is. Once again, maybe at some point more of us will get it than not. So to me, it becomes, it has some utility to see these things, and for there to be some controversy around it of people being upset. Come on, man, you're portraying yourself as Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me? That's it. Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? But to have charges in the American media of the president committing an act of blasphemy and similar statements that I've heard, to me is very disturbing, very troubling. What happened to those dreams in the 18th century, in the 19th century, that we were moving away from this, that we were going to, all be Unitarians, and we're going in science and reason we're going to be our guides. We're moving into a more primitive state of thinking than we had. So I'm very upset by it, obviously, and to be quite honest, I don't think I would be a mediator. I'd just say I'm not equipped to mediate that. This is stupid.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, what are your thoughts on the people, just the nature of a society that takes the seemingly blasphemous image more seriously than actual war crimes, like bombing girls' schools or bombing fisher boats off of Venezuela and stuff like that, actually killing people?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm equally as disturbed by this, and that's ongoing for me. I remember, during the first Gulf War, when people were almost giddy about the hundreds of thousands of civilians that we killed, that this country killed in Iraq and Afghanistan with bombs, with cluster bombs that basically hit the ground and kill everything that's knee-high within a square mile or whatever it is. And then show up at an abortion clinic and talk about how much you value life. The cognitive dissonance and the hypocrisy are more than we can bear, more than I can bear. It just like, as you said, tying in, it's just like talking about blasphemy and not recognizing, not going to that place Lynn talked about to begin with. How do we think beyond our own limited moment that we're in, right? That we're stuck in. I mean, Trump is a really, really horrible example of a thinker, right? Because he doesn't need data. He's so godlike, at least in his opinion, of himself, that he doesn't need data, he can just speak, and whatever he says is true. You see this in the example of the shoes that he's given to his staff, right? I don't know if you heard this story, but he decided to give shoes to some of the men in his cabinet, and he didn't ask their shoe sizes. So they're walking around, Marco Rubio is walking around in boats, with it too big for his feet, because he's, not man enough to say, can I return these and get the right size or whatever, But this is a man who just says, get him this size and him this size and her that size or whatever, Doesn't need to ask what size, because I'm God, I know, right? I mean, that's a really extreme example. But a lot of us, we have these thoughts and we get married to them, and they're very limited in the vast universe that we exist in, right? And I think that's a really big part of the problem. Most of us aren't wired to think beyond our assumptions, to immediately think beyond our assumptions. To say, well, no human statement is ever fully adequate, so I have to walk humbly as I proceed in the world and be able to consider other things. So, when you start to consider the issue of abortion, for example, of people who say their right to life, there's so much more than just the bombing of, the children. We saw the Iranian girls' school where dozens of girls were killed, and children throughout Gaza, Iran. There, not just children, but innocent civilians in general. We see this happening all the time, and we don't have. By the way, I have another album coming out, AI album. It's called Forgotten Folk. And it's kind of a play on words. Remember how the folk music used to speak about the issues of our time? And I'm like, where did those folksters go, And so this is like 60s, 70s styles folk music that talks about the issues of our day, right? From that perspective. And there's a song in it called Where Are Those Heroes Then? About people standing in front of abortion clinics to protect people that haven't even taken a breath yet, while they're nowhere to be seen when we see children being killed all over the world, where we see children killed in our classrooms. We want it's state rights when it comes to the abortion issue, but it's the federal government's job to do all of these other things, like determine if there's going to be AI regulations or not, to prevent California from even starting on being wise on those things. So just all of this hypocrisy. But we've got an environmental disaster that is endangering our lives. We've got a healthcare crisis that the Republicans have continued to do nothing about, despite every election saying we have a plan, but nothing ever manifests. We've got children, we got schools that are falling apart and understaffed and underfunded. I mean, there's just so much going on that is detrimental to life that this party is ignoring, while going around claiming to be the right to life people, the pro-life people. And that is a real big sign of what seems to be the issue that is being discussed here this morning. So now, Alan has his hand up, so I'm going to do one more real quickly. I was just kidding when I said this doesn't mean a thing. I'm paying attention.
Okay, good. I'm a fan of the PIT. It's a medical program, emergency room. Saw something Friday, it just kind of, I think my eyebrows climbed to the back of my head. It's something called free births or wild birthing. Oh, somebody's laughing. It's completely over the rainbow, a rejection of any and all medical assistance, treatment, intervention to get a birth. And it's very strange because women are dying in a fair number. because they're not taking care of conditions that could be easily taken care of. And it's simulated, you know?
So Alan, if I can get into it, because
But it's the idea, the freedom of choice, to go and kill yourself and the child you're carrying with you. It just throws me sideways.
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that the person is, you know, I mean, yeah, a person that chooses to have a natural birth or go a natural route. I mean, I think that there's some arguments for that, right? And that was, you know, I saw that episode. I'm a big fan of the Pit, like everybody else in the country, I think, at this point. But I think that, you know, the greater issue is there's something in logic called the naturalistic fallacy, right? Where we tend to think that everything in nature is good. It's like if it's natural, it's good. Remember when we were arguing against gay marriage and gay rights, right? It's not natural, right? And when society was saying that we shouldn't give these folks equality or treat them with respect or dignity or give them the same rights as everyone else, well, it's not natural. And then often the supporters of the movement would argue that it is natural, and they'd go and find science indicating that there's, you know, genetic distinctions that make somebody gay or whatever it might be. That's both are the naturalistic fallacy. First of all, people should have rights because they're human beings, period. We don't have to find out what your genetics say. That's the whole point of just social justice. Doesn't matter what your genetics say. You should have the right to choose who you love, period. But the naturalistic fallacy, there is sort of this tendency of a lot of us to think, because, you know, there is a connection to nature. We feel something when we're out in the natural world. We have a sense of beauty and the asymmetrical balance of life, and when it is upset the way it is right now because of global warming and the impacts of our human presence, that balance is disturbed, and it's ugly and it's scary, and there's a lot to this sense that if it's natural, it must be good. But if you stop and think about it, everything is natural, right? I mean, beavers themselves can create a lot of environmental damage for other creatures. Invasive species can completely change the environment. Tornadoes, hurricanes, bacteria, viruses, they are all natural. And they're not always fun. They're not always good. So yeah, I understand the desire to do natural childbirth. Peggy was able to, I mean, we went to a hospital, but she rejected any kind of, you know, pain medicine or anything like that. She wanted our children to come into the world wide awake and not drugged. And she was able to get through that. You know, those were 8-hour labors. That's a long time, but not as long as it could be, right? So, I mean, I really commend her. I have a song on one of my albums on Heroes where it's an homage to her giving birth to our children with that in mind. But we went to a hospital. I mean, we know things can go wrong. And in fact, I did a funeral for a baby that died in birth at home with a midwife many years ago. And it could have been prevented if there were, you know, the resources around. So I would just point out that the naturalistic fallacy that everything that happens in nature is good and everything that is not natural is bad it could put us in a compromised position, like you're getting at, Alan, or like the Pit portrayed in that series last weekend. I won't go any deeper into it, but I would also start to question what is natural and what isn't. And I'll just leave with this perhaps a controversial statement. I think that human activity is natural. I think that the things we create are natural, that the technologies we create are natural, that it's part of nature to compel us to do the things we do. And like any creature, we alter the environment, and the environment needs to evolve along with us, or the environment alters us, and we need to evolve or adapt and evolve along with it. And right now, we're at a place of exponential change in which nothing can keep up with what this instinctive drive within life is creating on our planet. So I do not agree with the naturalistic fallacy. I think it is committed far too much by far too many people who are well-meaning. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. I was right. It doesn't mean a thing. Little late, but let's maybe just move on with our benediction. Thank you, and our closing song.
Let us leave today with the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. It's the story of our faith. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.